So I will call to order the special meeting of council of the town of Gibsons on July 15th, 2025 for 3:52 p.m. And we're honored to be gathered on the traditional territories of the Squamish Nation. First, we need to approve the agenda. Moved by Councillor Kroll, seconded by Councillor Lumley. All those in favor? The motion carries. And we need to adopt minutes from July 8th, 2025 of a regular council meeting, moved by Councillor Kroll, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? The motion carries. And now we are on to our first item of business at this meeting after adopting the minutes, and that is a delegation from Sunshine Coast Tourism. We're joined by Annie Wise, and I see Wendy. Hi, Wendy, and who's our Gibsons Point person here, so welcome, Wendy, too.
Oh, thank you. Let's see. Will it come up? Because it's already loaded? Yeah. Sorry. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Okay. Just gonna move that a little closer. There we go. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name is Annie Wise, and I'm the Executive Director of Sunshine Coast Tourism. I would like to acknowledge that the work of our organization takes place on the traditional territories of the Squamish, Shishalt, Tla'amin, Klahoose, and Hamalko First Nations. And we are also a nonprofit organization. We're led by a, sorry, got a bit of a cough going, so I apologize if my voice is a little hoarse. We're led by a volunteer 11-member board of directors representing many facets of the tourism industry from across the Sunshine Coast. Here in Gibsons, we have directors Alicia Adam from the Sunshine Lodge, we have Sheng Ma from the Gibsons Garden Hotel, and Linda Williams from the Gibsons Jazz Festival and Coast Cultural Alliance. As your regional destination marketing organization, I'm of course here to share highlights from our 2024 annual report and also our report for the Gibsons Visitor Center and reflect briefly on the measurable value that we continue to deliver on behalf of Gibsons. Oh, no, does it want to go? Sorry. Oh, there we go. All right, now we're cranking. Okay. So, of course, when we talk about tourism, it isn't just about visitors. The tourism industry is a powerful economic driver that supports nearly every facet of our local economy, from restaurants and shops to transportation, the arts, and outdoor recreation. And what we're doing at Sunshine Coast Tourism isn't just about promotion. It's also about making sure that tourism supports the well-being of our communities and creates value for local businesses and reflects the values of the people that live here. The work of a destination organization like us is the building block of all other economic development. And the work that we do in building and managing a destination brand, promotion and sales, and place stewardship is all designed to turn this wheel, which is on the picture there, that we call the community vitality wheel. So if you put it simply, if you build a place where people want to visit, then you've built a place where people want to live. And if you've built a place where people want to live, then you've built a place where people want to work, which means you've built a place where business and residents will invest, and then more people want to visit. So it all starts with a visit, and this is why our work is critical to community vitality. Oh, it's working now. Great. So let me walk you through a few quick highlights from the past year, all of which are, of course, backed up in the report if you'd like to take a deeper look. So first of all, in our marketing reach, we had more than 14 million ad impressions this last year. Our website traffic jumped 39%, reaching 2.4 million page views. We also sent 221,000 direct referrals to local businesses. That's real customers finding places to eat, stay, shop, and explore. Secondly, on visitor spending and economic impact, we conservatively estimate that about $256 million in direct visitor spending happened annually last year. In addition to that direct spending, we also estimate an additional almost $150 million in indirect and induced spending, generating about $400 million in economic output annually for the Sunshine Coast. As an industry made up of mostly small businesses, the money spent in this sector is recirculated many times over locally. And in Gibsons, about 13% of total employment is generated in the tourism sector, which is much higher than the national average at 8%. A third highlight is that the traditional accommodations, so that'd be your commercial hotels, motels, resorts, was up. Their room revenues last year was up about 10% year over year. And our focus is on improvements in the off-season. So since 2019, the total annual room revenues have nearly doubled for the region, but the true insight comes when you look at the off-season, so where room revenues have nearly tripled during that time. So it's outpacing the growth of peak season. So that's just further proof that our strategy is working and supporting businesses when we know they need it the most. Finally, a highlight just around our media coverage, our travel media program. So our region appeared in over 57 earned travel media stories in 2024, including the New York Times, the Boston Globe, MSNBC, The Amazing Race, and many, many more. These are stories that reach millions and build credibility and showcase the Sunshine Coast to travelers across the globe. Our staff work really hard to do this with a coordinated approach. It doesn't just happen by accident. Although occasionally some people might write something about the Sunshine Coast, we work hard to pitch those stories to the right media, the right outlets. We invite them on experiences and build itineraries for them and do a lot of fact checking and things like that to make sure that these stories tell the type of story that we want to tell about our region. So, of course, there's no destinations without its challenges. Here are a few just that we're actively working to manage and monitor. So first, on accommodations, the ongoing changes at the provincial level to short-term rental regulations have created a drop in available inventory, especially for some particular types of travelers and traveler groups, like family groups looking for multi-bedroom options. That's led to compression during the peak season with fewer places for visitors to stay, which has, of course, real ripple effects, not just on those short-term rentals, but on businesses like restaurants, tours, and shops. So it's something we want to continue monitoring and making sure that we have good data understanding what's happening there and how we can advocate for improvements. Secondly, transportation. Don't think there's any big secrets on that one. Ferry access continues to be a barrier. We did recently release a BC Ferries messaging guide to our partners in our industry newsletter. This is providing support for local businesses to help them help their guests on, here's how to get here smoothly, here's how to understand what ferries are reservable, what ferries aren't, and all of those kind of ins and outs that our guests don't always understand. But it also works to encourage collective advocacy for our industry with templated letters that folks can send to BC Ferries, the commissioner, the province, all the decision makers. We're hopeful that this two-pronged approach can support both a better visitor experience, better local experience, and also affects change and service improvements. The third issue that we're really keeping a close eye on is just industry collaboration in a general sense. One of our biggest ongoing efforts is simply keeping everyone moving in the same direction. Not only are we an industry of industries, but we also work across 2 regional districts, 3 municipalities, and hundreds of independent businesses. And we believe our strength comes from acting as one destination, but that kind of alignment, of course, takes constant work. And we find that the more fragmented this industry is and the stakeholders involved, the less effective, and we end up duplicating efforts, duplicating costs, or working at cross purposes. So we're really trying to make sure that we're all paddling in the same direction. And of course, all of these challenges are made harder by rising marketing costs and stiff competition from destinations with far larger budgets than our own, even just provincially, let alone, globally. So that's why, coordinated strategy and a unified voice are more important than ever. So looking ahead, our focus is on keeping the momentum going and making sure tourism continues to deliver that value year-round and not just in the summer months. So we'll be rolling out key parts of our new 5-year strategic plan, which includes growing sectors like small meetings and corporate retreats, some opportunities within sport tourism and film production, all of which I think are great fits for our region and will help diversify the visitor economy so we're not so heavily reliant on that leisure visitor. We're also excited to grow our Sunshine Coast Flavor Festival, which was a restaurant week style event that we launched this past spring for the very first time and was an all-around success for a first-time event in growing our reputation as a culinary destination, and also really that active driving foot traffic to local restaurants that participated in the program. We're also continuing to invest in more data and research. Both Destination Canada and Destination BC have recently come out with new programs that we can opt into as in a partnership, and it'll help us better understand, who's visiting, when, and why, and how we can serve them better and navigate some of these challenges. And that also includes insights that we want to be able to share with our local partners and local governments and to support informed decision making. So we encourage you to reach out with your data questions and whatever insights that you might be looking for so that you can make informed decisions that impact the visitor economy as well. Couple of highlights on just the first 6 months of 2025. Most of our performance stats are showing year-over-year increases of about 15% this year, with visits in the Gibsons Visitor Center up 20% year to date. Hotel room revenues up about 15% across the board. We're seeing significant increases in visits from Americans, plus more domestic travel this year, which of course isn't unique to the Sunshine Coast and is at least in part influenced by some of the political discourse and tariffs and things like that. But we're above the curve in provincially and doing everything we can to make sure we're riding that wave, so to speak. So everything we're going to do in the coming year ties back to our goals, which are really about supporting local business success, easing the seasonal strain, and building a strong and sustainable tourism economy that reflects the values of the community. So in closing, I do come with a request to you today, and I know it can't be decided at this meeting, but we are requesting a letter of support from Council to support our upcoming application to the province to renew the MRDT, that's the additional hotel tax for our region. In addition to the renewal, our board, Sunshine Coast Tourism's board, has also unanimously voted to proceed with a proposed increase from 2% MRDT as it's currently levied to 3%. Those are the two options allowed by the province. I've sent a backgrounder document on the MRDT program and an example template of the letter of support that's included in your agenda today, but I'll briefly summarize a couple of main points and then I'll be done. So first of all, this isn't a resident paid tax. It's a tax that visitors pay on overnight accommodation stays, and it's been the primary source of funding for tourism marketing in our region, as well as pretty much how every tourism organization across the province and many worldwide are funded. It's how we've delivered these results from marketing reach and growth in room revenues and off-season growth. With this 1% increase, this will help support the funding to all MRDT-related projects, primarily in destination marketing and those efforts to improve seasonality and diversify the visitor economy with some of those other kind of non-leisure activities I was talking about, and also the funding that comes for affordable housing. What's important to know is that this funding model is initiated and supported by the tourism industry itself. The province only approves MRDT collection in a community when a majority of the commercial accommodation providers choose to opt in. So they have to sign on and support. So it requires that partnership between both the industry as well as the local governments and that public connection there. So it's a way for the industry to invest in its own success and to stay competitive with other destinations. Our application would be subject to strict provincial guidelines as it has been the last 5 years, which includes a 5-year strategy, submission of annual plans and annual reports, and the town's letter of support is a required part of the renewal process, as it was 5 years ago at the last renewal and 5 years before that. So it's a simple letter that confirms that Council recognizes the value of this program and supports the industry in allowing them to continue to levy this fund. So we trust that you'll continue to support this proven and industry-led program and that we can build on our shared success. So we're grateful for your partnership and contributions. Of course, there's lots more reading there. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. I know, Mayor White, you introduced my colleague Wendy Wright, but she's our Member and Visitor Services Manager based here in Gibsons, and I'm just happy to have her with me today, and I just want to make sure and acknowledge her. I have incredible staff, and Wendy's a big part of that, so thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to questions from Council. I see Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. You have great reports. There's so much valuable information in there, and one of the things that grabbed me was 50% of tourism reports visiting friends and family, which is, and I loved the Alberta campaign that was activated when their temperatures drop, and it was a great one. So I didn't want to bypass all the great work that's presented here, but I did want to jump right into the MRDT tax, because this is the first time for me that I've seen it in so much detail, which was great. So I have a couple of questions, if I can roll with it. So the SCRD is charging 2%. The contract that's coming up that would extend us into 2031 would be to 3%.
It's not the SCRD, though.
Or sorry, the, sorry, the.
It's provincial
SCT.
tax. Oh,
Yeah.
SCT. Okay,
SCT,
yeah.
yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to read my notes here, if that's okay. So, and of that, 210,000 was allocated from the online accommodation platform. Do we know what portions of these income are specifically driven from Gibsons?
Yeah. And, yeah, Councillor Thompson did ask me this, and I said, best to ask it publicly, so, because this is a topic of lots of conversation, so we want to bring this up again, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, and one that I'm familiar with. So when the MRDT tax is levied, the funding is, or sorry, it's the remittances go back to the province, to the Ministry of Finance. So if you're a hotel or you're an Airbnb, you pay your taxes, remit your taxes, and you're paying alongside PST the MRDT. And so what then the Ministry of Finance does is collect those for the different what they call accommodation areas, the Sunshine Coast being one of them, and they send us a letter and a deposit. And that letter every month says, here's how much came from the hotel sector, and here's how much came from the Airbnb side of things. And we don't get any further breakdown or detail on sub-regions within the Sunshine Coast, which is Langdale to Lund, which is super frustrating, I know, for all of you in terms of how do we distribute this funding equitably. But even, I mean, we would love those insights to understand, hey, is Gibson's doing better, or is Texada Island doing worse, or what's happening? We don't have that level of detail, and we can look to some other sources for sort of performance reporting, but it's hard to know with certainty. So it's definitely a blind spot. It's one that we've actively asked, and the MRDT is sort of jointly administered provincially between the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Tourism, and the Ministry of Tourism through Destination BC as a Crown corporation. So it's all, there's lots of hands in that, but basically our requests to the Ministry of Finance have come back with, tax privacy, and that they won't share any further breakdown.
Really? Can I continue?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because especially with the online accommodation platform, I think that would be very valuable information to have, considering that each region has their own guidelines as to how they're managing Airbnbs. So the municipalities that are, perhaps making it more viable versus the ones that are shutting it down are sharing equally in that benefit. Is there any opportunity as you go into this negotiation to have some room for discussion? It sounds like it's a rather closed door.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something that we've asked for, and with this submission of the application, there isn't a clear way to do that. And what's, I think, even more challenging is that every sort of tourism accommodation area is different. In some communities, like Victoria, that's one municipality and one tourism organization for tourism or Destination Victoria. But in other places, there's multiple communities, much like how our region operates. And so I know some of my colleagues that are part of these other organizations that have multi jurisdictions are having the same struggles, and nobody really has a clear answer at this point. So I think, from my perspective, a couple of opportunities are, one, to continue to advocate to the province that they would provide us with more clarity with that reporting, and two, to I think there's a lot of ways that we could help support local governments in having a conversation about how this funding is distributed. I know from a tourism industry perspective, it's really important to the tourism industry that it's going towards workforce housing, as opposed to other types of affordable housing initiatives, which are very commendable, but don't necessarily impact that workforce piece that's really important to the tourism industry. And so I think there's, an element for conversation to be had. So I don't know what the procedure for that would look like, but if there's a, workshop or an opportunity for dialogue between some of the local government partners, and how can, regionally, how can we look at sharing this funding differently maybe than has been for the last 5 years? And that's something that if regionally the different partners can agree on, the province will allow. They're not being prescriptive in that sense of like how the affordable housing funding is being used, but rather saying, submit your plan, and I don't, I'm not an affordable housing authority, so it's not my plan to submit. It's right now that's going through the regional district. But I think there's an opportunity for us to facilitate more conversation there.
Agreed, yeah.
I'll go to Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor White. Great report. A lot of visual eye candy, which is always nice. Sort of circling back to this MRDT thing once more. When residential guest accommodation operator decides to, let's say, support the film industry and rents their unit for 5 months to film, I'm assuming they don't do that through the usual platforms, which means you're not getting the MRDT from that. Is that correct? Do you know?
Go ahead.
So MRDT is only required to be levied on short-term stays. So that's defined by the province as less than 30 days. So regardless of how you're selling that accommodation, whether it's through Airbnb or your own online website or Craigslist or whatever, you're still subject to the tax if it's less than 30 days. But in a case of 5 months or other long-term rentals, that there would be no MRDT required.
Other questions? Councillor DeAndrade.
Thank you. Yeah, great report. It's really, the statistics are quite impressive, right? It's basically doubled since 2019. And here it says on closing, it says off-season revenues nearly tripling in the same period. I know you guys have been doing campaigns, but can you elaborate a little bit what's the highlight? What is the really drive for this triple?
Thank you. It's I would say it's a collection of a lot of different initiatives over several years. It takes time to, of course, build momentum and build demand and even awareness. What we've seen a lot is that a lot of people, even just in the Lower Mainland, kind of didn't know the Sunshine Coast existed. They're like, yeah, I've been to Vancouver Island. And so we've been doing just a lot of awareness campaigns since I started more than a decade ago. It's just about, hey, the Sunshine Coast is here. We're more than just a great place to go to the beach in the summertime. Here are all the other things to see and do and experience while you're here. We've also had new partnerships develop. So we are partners with programs like the BC Ale Trail. We're partners with lots of different kind of sector-based programs. And so to help highlight some of those unique experiences, like our craft breweries that have really emerged over the last 10 years and cideries and how great those experiences are. So some of it's that, some of it is just as you market more and you build momentum, it sort of has a cascading effect, and that people tell their friends and tell their family and have these kind of things. And then more people come and stay, which grows the MRDT, which grows the funding available to us to do more marketing. So it's really self-fulfilling for us that if we're doing a good job, we're growing our own funding, which is a pretty cool program and is quite unique compared to, I think, how some other industries get funding and things like that.
Thank you. I was just more curious with the off-season revenues, because I know the off-season was the big, you have good tourism during the summer season and then it drops a lot. So it's on the same line, or there's specific, I'm just trying to understand what's a specific drive for people to come here. I know there's some winter festivals, this helps, but what else? The Sunshine Coast Tourism is kind of
Yeah.
brainstorming to attract more people during the off season.
So in terms of like what types of activities we're promoting, yeah, absolutely. I mean, sometimes it's leaning into actual winter experiences like Dakota Ridge, and saying, hey, you know, you can come cross country ski and snowshoe here. But more often than not, it's about this is an easy getaway. It's quiet, it's calm, it's peaceful. All the things that I think we as residents love about living here all year round, visitors enjoy too. We hear often, one of the top activities all year long is still hiking. People want to go and be in the woods, even when it's pouring rain. It's restorative. Wellness is a big feature in terms of everything from mushroom foraging to, spas and that kind of thing, and just being, there's forest bathing tour operators here on the coast now, and all of these different kind of sectors. People still like to go fishing in the winter time. There's actually sometimes really great fishing in the winter, so we see lots of activity with our fishing operators. So there's all sorts of different things, and we just work hard to make sure that we're promoting those activities to the right people in the right places at the right time. And that's really where, our strong marketing strategy, and it's less about just casting this huge wide net and more about kind of laser targeted to know, that we're getting the people that are most likely to come here. So we deal with a lot of sort of marketing intelligence and trying to make sure that that's effective and constantly revising things.
Anything? Nope. Okay, well, thank you for, actually, I did want to comment too, just great news about the recent numbers of tourism going up, and thank you for keeping on top of that too and reporting that. One question I have though too is on short-term rentals. I believe, the registry, there's a provincial registry, and I believe we have this is kind of a question for staff too, because I think we have access to the registry, and I think it would probably be really helpful for Sunshine Coast Tourism to know what the numbers are in the registry coast-wide, and seeing in Seashelt and SCRD and in Gibsons. And I know Seashelt and SCRD have got access to the provincial registry to see their numbers. I don't know if we have yet, though. And I haven't asked until now because, haven't had the opportunity, but it's coming up. So I'll look to staff and.
Thank you, Mayor. I haven't looked at the registry myself, but I'm not sure if the bylaw department has either, but they would have access to it if it was accessible for municipal staff.
Well, we should take note of looking at those numbers and sharing them with Sunshine. Do you have them for the other local governments?
We haven't been given access to the provincial registry.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we will, but yeah, that would definitely be super helpful. We've mostly been relying on AirDNA, which is has some challenges in terms of the accuracy, but it's at least given us sort of a benchmark. One of the challenges is beyond just the number of units, is that doesn't necessarily have a direct correlation in terms of the MRDT revenue generated, because of course it's based on room revenue. So the large, huge house with, that's charging $1,200 a night is going to have a totally different remittance than a, $100 a night place kind of thing that's only operating for part of the year. So sometimes that part of it, and how do we tie those pieces together, not just the number of units, but then also, but more information is better. And I think there's, we could come up with, some educated guesses and work on that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and next meeting we'll look at the request.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Now we are moving on to 5.1 and 5.2, which are connected, which are the bylaw readings for the public hearing topic that came up earlier, Phase 3 Christensen lands. The first one would be the official community plan amendment bylaw. And I don't think we have any introduction to these really. If there is needed, that's been done. But yeah, certainly during discussion, councillors can bring up any questions about this topic, including questions we have heard through the dialogue so far. Councillor DeAndretti.
Thank you, Mayor. On the Special Council, June 25th, page 116 agenda, it says that there will be a public information meeting and the applicants will share comments received from the public information meeting. Did council receive these comments?
Yes,
Okay. I
we
could not-
absolutely did. I remember. I think everyone else remember, yeah.
I wasn't sure. I kind of remember some comments, but I wasn't sure. Okay.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it's always up to the applicant to put on these meetings, and then they collect the information and sent it back to our staff, and then it was shared with council. I just want to check on a couple things. I have some points to make in response to concerns that were brought up too, but I do think it's important to recognize there is some confusion apparently about the public access, and I'm glad Peter is here too. I don't know if we have any visuals, access to any visuals, but and we don't have, we wouldn't in the agenda either because it's just the bylaw in the agenda, right? But one question that was asked a couple times actually was about the access to the third phase, and I can kind of go by memory. It's pretty similar to the access to the second phase. It's just really there's a parking lot there, and then you turn in. But did you want to address this specifically, Councillor Lumley?
I wrote that down too. It was the safety of it. So I just
Yeah, and the
wasn't,
safety of it too.
yeah, I wasn't sure what.
And
they were
I guess kind of
driving
the
at.
interface of how and I know this was discussed earlier too in previous discussions too, is that the interface of active transportation and pedestrians accessing White Tower Park too, because I know we identified that. Continuing to support that's really important. So, and safely, whether it's people from Christensen Village or people from coming down O'Shea, still being able to have that access. I'll go to our planning department to answer this
Yeah,
as
thank you,
best as
Mayor.
possible with no visual.
Yeah, we have opened a visual that if Tracy's able to share it, then we can. But the access for Phase 3 shares the same driveway as Phase 2. So you would come in the same way you do, there it is, for Phase 2. That's the gray Y coming off O'Shea Road there. And you would turn right for Phase 3 or go straight in for Phases 1 and 2. And the other piece is the trail is being continued along the frontage as it's a multi-use path through to Shaw Road. That's sort of the two outlines shown on that drawing. So yeah, the main intersections with the road are just one access, and pedestrians are carried along. Pedestrians and smaller wheeled people can travel along the multi-use path, and there would be shared use for commuter type cyclists along the road.
So that really doesn't change because there's already the access there for Phase 2.
Correct.
Then another note I took was just a request of clarity about the status of a riparian area under DPA 2. And I thought that was kind of a possibility. We talked about this before too on the edge of the property where the park dedication is, but we weren't even totally certain that it even quite comes to this property yet. I don't know if staff has confirmed that or not yet.
Yeah, so currently, Development Permit Area 2 has a riparian area, as was pointed out in the comments, along the south property line. We had a report and issued a development permit for the first phases of the project that include some plantings along that south side and a swale. It was not identified as a very sensitive riparian area. In fact, parts of it are more of a ditch, as was reported. But as it gets into the forested lands toward White Tower Park, it does feed into other riparian areas. So that would be addressed through a development permit. And if any changes were recommended by the QEP, that can be addressed at the building permit stage. So the zoning amendment and the OCP amendment provide the setbacks, the height, the density, but there's still room to alter the details of the plan if need be for the forested areas.
Okay, thanks. And then a third question I wanted to ask based on the public hearing was about the parking study. And for one thing, I can clarify, Urban Systems does a lot of work for the Sunshine Coast. Urban may be in the name, but it's they're very, very familiar with Gibsons and our small town and actually other small communities across BC too. So I think that's not, I mean, I understand the concern, but it's not, urban is not what their focus is. But on their parking study, just based on some of those concerns, I wanted to ask, what were those numbers based on? Because I think, I mean, my assumption is that they would have been pulled by looking at other comparable developments in the town, including Phase 1, which I've heard has not needed a lot of parking. And though there is construction, obviously construction vehicles that are in that area, the need for additional construction parking right now. But could we just have a little bit of clarity on that, where those numbers came from in terms of collecting different data?
Yes, yeah, thank you. In response to that question, I've pulled up the parking study, and I can see that the consultant pulled vehicle ownership rates for specific units and references. So these include, they studied 3 rental apartment buildings in Gibsons, which averaged 0.69 vehicles per unit in terms of used spaces, which is very close to the 0.7 that's recommended for rental housing in the zoning amendment. They've also referenced comparable communities on Vancouver Island, including Colwood, and they've provided those separately, Colwood, Langford, View Royal, and those averaged ownership rates of 0.52 vehicles per unit. And then there is a reference in terms of the seniors rate of 0.35 per seniors unit. That was taken from statistics in Metro Vancouver, presumably because they weren't specifically available in a smaller community. Yeah.
Thanks. Any more questions before I entertain a motion? Councillor DeAndrade?
Thank you. I think I realized that the traffic study did not include Gospel Rock development, which is gonna be using Shaw Road, if I'm correct. Shaw Road will be a collector road. So,
Like hypothesizing that there are going to be,
well, but it was approved. The development has been approved.
true, but we haven't had, it was approved, how long ago was that approved? Sorry? When?
2018?
2018, and I don't think there's been any traffic increase for 7 years. So it hasn't caused any traffic increase, the approval of it. But, I mean, it would be just kind of hypothesizing if it.
So,
Okay. Councillor Kroll, do you have a concern about that? Sorry.
Well, to Councillor D'Andretti's point, ultimately, is there not supposed to be a connection road at Inglis through to Shaw Road connecting to Gospel Rock? So obviously, there's not going to be any impact since 2018 of traffic because the connector isn't there and Gospel Rock hasn't been built out. But I think to Councillor D'Andretti's point, that ultimately there is going to be an increased volume of traffic from Gospel Rock and Eagleview.
Yeah, should there be development at Gospel Rock, but there's nothing yet. But I mean, so that's really, I guess the question is, did the traffic study anticipate any anticipated future? It seems like it would be a lot to ask. There'll be another one by the time. Yeah, I mean, do we understand what we're asking? Did the traffic study of, and it isn't the parking study, but the traffic study of what the traffic impact would be, did it consider what we might be anticipating for Gospel Rock, Connector, or Eagle View Heights, which doesn't have full traffic yet? I'm seeing no. So no, I don't. That would be a lot to ask, I think, somebody to, because usually what they do is, I mean, I understand what traffic studies is, people actually go on site and kind of count cars and have a look at road design, and it's, I mean, I guess what they would have to do is kind of amalgamate other traffic studies that have been done for those other developments, but I don't think that was done in this case. Councillor Lumley.
It'd be pretty easy because that whole road is mitigated on like the first few units being built. That's the timeline. So, I mean, staff would be able to estimate like when that, yeah, it could be 10 years from now. I don't know. I mean, and I don't know if that would be relevant to a current traffic study, or it's just more work for more information that won't come to fruition until probably the next traffic study, right? So, I don't know. I mean, it's all based on how many units they build, because that was part of their agreement, right? They have to pay for that road so those people can access those units. So, I mean, it's in the agreement. I'm pretty sure you could ask staff, but I think it's all in, it's pretty solidified how many units will be there and when the road gets built. So you can only imagine the traffic at that point.
Yeah, and I guess, I think we really need to focus on this particular decision too. But I'll go to staff on this, see if they've got anything to add.
Yeah, I don't see anything relating to other proposed developments or approved developments, but I do see that they did analyze the expected trips from this development, if that's helpful. And that is 21 trips during the morning peak hour and 26 trips during the afternoon peak hour anticipated, which they, in their conclusion, was determined to have a minimal impact on the traffic flows.
Yeah, that's very low. I don't want to get into a debate on traffic right now, but are there any other questions for staff before we, Councillor Diandrade?
I have a question. It's not a debate. I want to understand. So if Gospel Rock has been approved, and by the time they come back and there's a traffic study and says it's too many, does it mean we change all the proposal? We change the road? Because my understanding is that Shaw Road will be one of the... No, we don't.
No. Councillor Johnson.
My question was related to the parking study. I don't have it in front of me, and we were talking about those flow times. And that would also have been in consideration of the daycare, right? With that parking study of the inflow, outflow, drop-off of daycare?
That's good staff.
That's right. I do know that they considered the phases 1 and 2 in the study. I can't speak specifically to the daycare, but that's part of the proposal.
Yeah, I would have had to. I see, yeah.
Yeah, just through the mayor, I have one other thing that I wrote down. I know the one gentleman was pretty concerned with the safety of people not adhering to the 30-kilometer-hour speed limit. I don't know if he discussed speed bumps. I don't know if we've ever, as a council, I can't remember ever considering the speed bumps, but I know when we went through that process for adding the bike lanes, that also came up, was a safety concern, and back then, obviously, it was just inevitable that people would speed on wider roads. It was just a matter of fact that it's a long, straight, wide road. And so then that gentleman brought up the concern that people actually reduce speed down the road. I just wondered if we have any thought of slowing traffic down other than putting up 30-kilometer-an-hour signs.
To be determined in the traffic study that's coming. We'll look to our Director of Infrastructure who's overseeing that.
Thank you. Through the mayor, less specifically to Shaw Road, but with that gentleman also identified traffic speed concerns on O'Shea as well. And you'll be kind of seeing it in the quarterly report. We're working on a grant application through the BC Active Transportation Grant Program to do improvements to active transportation on O'Shea Road, which would include some traffic bump outs and speed bumps that are raised crosswalks at the crossings to the school, so they would kind of function as speed bumps as well as a kind of a safer crossing. That's kind of specific to the crosswalks that approach the school. I think revisiting the cross section of Shaw Road and the traffic or the active transportation infrastructure that's there in light of kind of the recent development certainly will be a focus for the transportation study. I think the design maybe at the time that was contemplated may not be as effective if we're looking at the growth on this property and within the neighborhood as well, and particularly with the Shawlands connector. If that were to get built and there is development in Gospel Rock, I think we'll certainly have to revisit Shaw Road as a corridor. And I think the active transportation, narrowing the road and to create those barriers to reduce speed is certainly can be a maybe more effective way of lowering speed than just speed bumps, because people tend to slow down at the speed bump and then they accelerate again. So it doesn't actually really reduce the speed, it only makes people slow down as they approach the speed bump.
Okay. Back to the bylaws. Councillor Kroll.
I was just going to ask if staff could bring up this site on Google Earth. It's one thing to look at it in an architect's presentation where it looks all very pretty with little green trees and one thing and another, but it has a very different impact on Google when you see it on Google Earth. Okay, so some of the, in the architect's presentation, you see two little red dots which represent two particular types of trees that for some reason show up in the architect's renderings. And I'm familiar with that property. If you look at approximately where those little red dots are on Google Earth, right now it's basically a cleared property with absolutely no vegetation. And I'm quite sure had the residents of those properties been here, they're currently in Sweden, they would have been at the public hearing today. Looking at where the property line is of the country cottages, which you can see quite clearly, we're basically removing all of that block of trees. It seems that construction being construction, it's much easier to deal with a clear site and put in trees after. So I totally appreciate some of the concerns that were being made by a couple of the people about just dealing with noise and ongoing construction. Here we are, the people that had the property with the red trees sitting on their back patio this summer during the heat. You had lovely cool breezes coming out of the woods. Now you get dust blowing across your property. You can't even open the doors.
Councillor Kroll, I just want to ask if, sorry to interrupt, but do you have a question? Because I feel like we're getting into debate of and if we're going to be doing that, we should put forward the motion and then speak for and against, and just everyone else was asking questions.
Okay, I'll move the motion then.
Okay, so that's a motion. So that's both bylaws. Can we do that? Just to end further that? 5.1 and 5.2, because they're really both the same debate. Yep, okay, is there a seconder? I'll second it. Nope, seconded by Councillor Lumley. Okay, go ahead, sorry, Councillor Kroll.
Oh, okay, I just, I am all for housing. I'm all for, rental housing. But I have sort of a concern with this project that it's happening almost too quickly. We've gone through the whole process of, the urban forest plan, looking at the block of trees that are being removed, and to one of the questions that was brought up in the public hearing was, we're losing these trees, where are we going to replace them? How are we going to replace them? When you look at the Google Earth picture, which it's not that recent, because obviously phase 2 is I think they're up to the 3rd story now, which isn't reflected in this image. But similarly, there's, it's going to take probably 15 years or so for anything to mature to the point that it's going to offer anything to compensate what's being lost on the site in existing vegetation. So I just feel really torn with the project. I think some of the concerns that have been raised by the people who spoke today are incredibly valid, and because of the time of year we're dealing with, there's a lot of people away that haven't had an opportunity to exercise their voice. So I'm just very concerned about, as much as I want to see this housing happen, I just think we're running at it. And I feel very uncomfortable about that.
Okay, I do want to address some of those things, and I see Councillor DeAndrade would like to speak too, but maybe I'll just address a couple points first. I just want to help frame this by reminding council that this property is already zoned for development, and it's been the plan for, as a former councillor reminded us, for decades for this land to be developed as public amenities, and part of that plan was what it's already zoned for, which includes that this could be developed right now for seniors housing, if with no public hearing. That's what the zoning is, and or for other public amenities. And it's actually Kiwanis who's been our leader in seniors housing in Gibsons, who's come to us saying, we don't want to do seniors housing. We'll do some seniors, but we want to open it up to families because we really recognize the need. And I think a lot of the community agrees with that need. And I heard that a lot from the public input we've been getting, and also from, even more so, in the official community plan input we've been getting, particularly from the residents' assembly. So I just want to make sure we're keeping that in mind, that this isn't like, it's not like we're taking land out of park and removing a park designation and turning it into, this land is designated for development. It's just what kind of development. And I'll go to Councillor DeAndrade, who had yeah, sure.
Thank you, Mayor. I have similar concerns Because, yes, this is land for public use, but we could choose, well, or there could be many ways of developing the land that doesn't need to pretty much take 90% of the trees or something like that, whatever is the percentage. I also, I felt that the process was rushed. I agree because we couldn't hear from the public. Then I wanted to have a public hearing to hear from the public, but I don't think this is a way of doing a project, especially on a land that is public, without really having feedback from the community. So I feel for the people who live there. I want to see the development, but I feel concerned with the impact. This is also, then we have obviously environmental impact because this is an area that has drainage issues, and it's not like a gentle development. It's a development that's going to take the majority of trees. So that's unfortunate that we didn't have a chance even to get some feedback, some expertise, or brainstorm some options. The project is this, and we have to make a decision right away on the density and on the height as well, which I particularly feel like these people have been bombarded with this project that initially was 3, we pushed to 4, and now 6. So I have concerns with this type of developments that try to address certain things, but then it causes so many impacts on the other hand. And this is public land in a way. I feel that we do, yes, we understand council has the commitment to bring affordable housing, but I just feel concerned with the way this proposal came and this fast decision we have to make, and I don't feel comfortable.
Okay. Did you want to speak to Councillor Kroll? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor White. Just to a couple of the comments you made. Back in 2019, or it may have been even 2018, when the proposal for the affordable housing on the site came up, I, sitting in this chair, said, why not develop the whole site at once to reduce the impact on the community and the neighbors with construction, with noise, with dust. Here we are, the Affordable Housing Society responded they didn't have the capacity to deal with it. We were very fortunate that we were able to do some fancy footwork and liaising with Lisa Helps and some of the funding because of the daycare issue, to sort of speed up phase 2, which I totally applaud. But, personally, I've lived in a neighborhood where we've been surrounded by construction for over 5 years, between new houses being built, from the street being redesigned, and it wears on you. I can fully appreciate the concern of some of the residents with just the dust, the noise, one thing and another. And that's not I'm the guy who wants affordable rental housing in this community. But I'm just a little concerned with, that we're going at this really too quickly. And, in support of what Councillor D'Andretti was saying, because of the time of year, a lot of people probably don't even know this is happening. It came to us, on the 24th at a special meeting on the 24th, was it? June?
I don't know, but this has been, the development going in that area has been going for some time, and we've been talking about phase 3 for a long time.
Well, I know, we talked about hospice and all sorts of things, and expansion of Christensen Village. Christensen Village is a 3-story building, now we're talking about a 6-story building. Anyway, I'll leave it there.
So I would like other councillors to have a chance to speak too. I want to look in this direction. But yeah, I think it would be a run it to say we're uncomfortable with the timing, let's wait, runs a huge risk of this never happening, which might be what some people want. I appreciate that. But it does, I've noticed that some people in our community, whether it was today, with one person raising the riparian area as something that needs to be addressed, and our staff did, but not being necessarily opposed to the height or anything else about the project, but saying the riparian area has to be addressed. So staff confirmed that would need to be considered through DPA too, and there might have to be an adjustment or anything if to make sure the riparian area is protected. From that to another comment we got in public information from George Smith, supportive of the development. These are people who's also supportive of let's continue to enhance White Tower Park and really double down on some of the really important natural areas we have, and which I completely agree with, and we've been doing a lot to enhance a property that is a genuine park. I really have a lot of appreciation for those voices, and including Leanne Johnson, the former councillor, who's a former chair of the Sunshine Coast Conservation Association. These are people who have huge concerns about the environment in our community, and I've spent a lot of time in that forest myself, and it's always unfortunate to lose any green space in town, but there needs to be a balance, and this is where we can build housing, and it's been the plan to meet a civic need here, and this council's identified that this is one of our greatest civic needs. I want to address one other suggestion that came up in the written feedback, which is, why aren't you building somewhere else? And I mean, we have very little town land. This is something's going to be built here at some point, I hope. That's been the plan. Whether it's now, and we don't necessarily know if it's now, because all this is, there is a timeline here to get a funding application in, but we don't know if we're going to get that funding. Maybe it will have to take a year or two, like the first phase took before it got funding. It had to go through a few different applications, and maybe with the way the provincial government's going now, this is the last chance to get any funding for affordable housing, the way they're talking austerity these days. So that's something we need to consider. And yeah, another huge need we have is health and long-term care. And somebody brought up, well, why can't this development be happening up at Vancouver Coastal Healthlands and off North Road? And well, they're not interested in developing anything right now. But if they do, it's probably going to be something within their scope, which would be a health facility, perhaps more long-term care, perhaps something perhaps assisted living or something. So that might move up there instead of being an expansion of Christensen Village. So I'll go to Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. When we look at Google Earth and you see green space, and of course, we all have that same feeling, but this project area would be developed regardless. We talked about reducing the footprint, going to 6 stories to do that. And this checks so many boxes that are a large part of our strategic plan. So I support it. I support the zoning change.
Yeah, I think Councillor Kroll has a really good point. Kind of like was rolling around the back of my mind as soon as it was proposed. It was just like, holy cow, like another building going down there. And you heard it from the people that live there. I don't know. I mean, if they don't care where the building is, I don't know if we've even, I don't know if we have land up by the RCMP building, which, do we have any property there? No? I thought we had like 2 acres or something up there, but anyway. Sorry, these are things rolling around. I know, I know I get it, like, but there's other considerations. If you're just gonna sell the farm just for housing, okay, then just go for it. But I think there's some valid concerns here, and I don't know if you can address them or slightly, if it's like a short delay or a time, or if there's something you could do to mitigate the effect for the adjacent neighbors. I don't know. I could see trying, if you have ideas, or if you leave some trees there. I think I spoke to it about the supportive housing unit. We left those trees, like there was a row of trees, you said, please don't take them down. And then, of course, they think that, well, then they're just gonna die, but they haven't died. So maybe there's a lower impact with the trees that are there that we can provide in this development that will protect some of the people that live next door, Maybe that'll decrease the noise, the visual, everything. I think they all have good points, right? So, I don't know, yeah. I mean, I kind of sympathize with them in a way, because it's, they're gonna live I don't know, 7, 8, 10 years of their life next to a construction site. It would be, if that was me, I'd probably move. I don't know, but anyway, I completely agree with it. So, and I'm for housing too. I mean, but if there's some way you can, I think Councillor Kroll, and I shouldn't be speaking for him, but I think he just thinks that it's just going to be another roll in there, chainsaws, hack the trees down, start construction. If there's another way that it can be done instead of like the first 2 phases, maybe it would benefit. It would still build housing, but it would also benefit the community that's already there. That's all. Maybe there's a fine balance there.
I just really want to jump in on the 7 or 8 years more of construction. I don't think that would be the timeline. I mean, that's going to make it in the newspaper or something. So I think it's, we need to be careful about, I thought you said the next 7 or 8 years. I mean, based on the way it's been going, it really depends on when the funding comes through, but it would probably be, I imagine, a couple more years of construction. If the funding were received immediately. But then, on the other hand, I mean, this is an area that council has envisioned to be developed, and it has been over our entire term. We've talked about it. The previous council talked about it. Councils before that talked about it. If the idea is it would be advantageous to wait. I mean, I heard one opinion that it's good to do it all at once, and then another opinion like maybe there should be a 2-year break or something. I don't know what's better. Like it's kind of like half a dozen in one, and it's I don't know what's better, but I do think council has a responsibility to really look at the long term and look at our priorities for the long term. And I agree with you, Councillor Lumley, that everything needs to be done to mitigate the impacts on people nearby. And I know I've been working directly with Spaney on Phase 2 because sometimes I get calls from people who are concerned about what's going on there. And Spaney's been incredibly responsive to them, and the at least one household that's often in touch with me has nothing but good things to say about the responsiveness of the developer, and I think that was happening with Phase 1 as well, and that's what we want to encourage in our developers, and I think that's part of why we're even looking at this is the success of the first 2 phases here, and to try to keep with that builder and to keep that rolling, and also to keep what the great work Kiwanis is doing rolling too. And this council has an opportunity to do that. And I'm afraid that if we, I'm concerned about the timeline too. It's been tight. It's been hard to fit in. I don't know if the decision would be different if we extended it. I mean, I feel like we'd be looking at all the same, we'd be looking at all the same information, all the same factors if we did this 2 months from now. A lot of work has gone into collecting all the information we need to make this decision. It might just make us feel a little more comfortable if we had a couple more months, but we'd have the same really determinants and factors to consider here. Unquestionably, it is uncomfortable. I think looking longer term and bigger picture, this is the right decision now to continue to take this opportunity to pursue affordable housing in a piece of land that is been planned for civic amenity, planned for development. Whether it's today, 2 months when we might have more comfort doing it, but isn't an opportunity because there's no chance of getting funding. A year or two from now, I think it's the same decision. It's a good decision. Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor White. I'm totally aware, you keep mentioning that this property has been, approved for use, and I'm not disagreeing with that. I would even be willing to support a further reduction in parking so the building could be moved more to the north to create a little wider buffer between it and the adjacent strata-titled units. I just feel like this thing has been dropped into our laps. I can't say enough how much I support housing. I'm the guy that's been the bane of existence for the Legion, trying to get them to redevelop their site, and working with some other groups in this community. I'm the guy that's been getting hate mail from churches saying, we're unhappy with what you brought forward with respect to permissive tax credits. But, we have something in front of us, and as I said, I'd be perfectly willing to support a further reduction on parking to afford some flexibility in the positioning of that building to maintain some of the existing vegetation.
I guess I did. One resident invited us to walk the site, and I'm very familiar with it, but I went up there anyway. And I think somebody else mentioned, why don't you build up on Reed Road because there's a bunch of scrub up there. Well, for one thing, we don't own property there, and I think it's even an SCRD. But this is the property we own and we can develop on. But back to that scrub comment, the land directly adjacent to it's kind of swamp scrub land right beside the country village, and I think we're looking at 2 or 3 houses that don't already have phase 1 or 2 beside them, I see White Tower Park. There's definite need for protection. I think, and there's no access too right now from those country village houses. It seems to, definitely. I tried to find it, and there's no access from country village directly over into this area. And I think maybe one thing we could do is have an access to White Tower Park from country village. Otherwise, kind of what we're protecting here is a wall of scrub, really, behind these people's property lines. And as far as drainage goes, the drainage issues are happening now, and I think this would have to be built in a way where those drainage issues would be resolved. That would just unquestionably have to. So I think there are some real opportunities for improvements for those 3 or 4 houses that live there at Country Village. That's how I see it. I mean, and more broadly than that, I'm really looking to the future here. Like these are a lot of units that people in this town can live in for decades into the future and enjoy life decades into the future, enjoy the fact that they're right beside White Tower Park. And to me, that's the big win for any council that needs to look at this town going into 20, 30, 50 years. That should be what we're looking at that's why we put forward our strategic plan. I am concerned about I think I am concerned about nixing that vision because we do have current residents who are having to swallow a hard pill of development going on around them. And that, as you mentioned, Councillor Kroll, that happens all over the town. Sometimes it's just single-family homes being renovated or developed. But I'm really, speaking of being uncomfortable, I'm very, very uncomfortable with kind of dropping that vision because we're concerned about some inconvenience for sure, and it's legitimate inconvenience for a couple more years. Councillor Piandrati.
Thank you, Mayor. We just completed the urban forest plan, and one of the things that it's throughout the plan over and over again is about the heat dome effect. And that's what I worry when we try to address one thing and in a way we create another problem that is also top, which is climate change. So yes, this area is set for development, but why does development has to be like taking 80-something% of the trees? And that's, I think, is the issue. And then obviously the rationale is, well, is the economy, is this, is that. And that's my concern because we are addressing, and I want to support affordable housing. And we did support, there's 70-something that is being built right now, plus there's other affordable housing that has been built in town. So it's not that things are not being built, but why cannot be another more gentle development like, even the other buildings were smaller. And I think that's the concern. I went several times this week to the site because I didn't want to have just one look. I want to have many looks. And I went there, and even today, the heat, even driving inside the complex, it was so hot. So hot. I had to put air conditioning in the car. So these are the impacts. Yeah, we are solving for these 78 people, and now we have the people on the side that they would lose their buffers on heat, which are the trees. And the plan that I see, it doesn't protect the forest on the side of the development, on the south side of the development. They're the ones adjacent to the country village. And I think that's the part that I feel we address one thing and we create a problem for other people. How many people live there? Maybe 80 or more. And so, we haven't had time to discuss this thing. We just have to accept the project as it is. The dance, okay, that's what we have. And that's the part that I feel torn. Because I want affordable housing, but why does it have to be this solution? Plus, all the other areas behind on like north, they're all going to be developed because they are private property. We won't be able to say no. This is the only area that we have control. So that's where my concern comes. There's it's either one way or no way.
I'll just speak to I guess another concern I have that, I mean, if we deny this proposal, I don't think we're gonna be meeting our strategic plan, really, when it comes to affordable housing and prioritizing affordable housing. That'll be an incredible disappointment. And part of that is it can't be compared so easily to private housing that I'm hearing here from you, Councillor DeAndrade, is, for one thing, I think you said there are other developments going on in town. There aren't. The only developments going on in this town are non-market. They're Kiwanis and the Affordable Housing Society. And that may be, I don't think we can count our chickens on any of these other private developments that have happened, because every single one of them is saying construction costs are too high. And note there hasn't been a single shovel on the ground. And it's similar in other communities. It's hard in other communities, I hear too, even in the Lower Mainland, with the economy right now, but it's much worse on the Sunshine Coast because of the cost of construction, bringing crews here or having crews that can do it here. I at the moment, I'm not expecting to see any shovels in the ground from some of those other developments we've approved this term. Not hearing anything hopeful on that. The only thing that is happening is non-market, and this is an opportunity again to work with a really great nonprofit, which is, again, I can't easily just compare it to a private development, because these units actually have the best affordability of even phase 1 and 2 with the breakdown. This is looking a gift horse in the mouth. This is an amazing opportunity for affordable housing here. It can't be easily compared to a private development that might have 10 units in it that are market affordable by CMHC standards, and then might lapse in that in 10 or 20 years. I think it's 10 years is often the case. So these are rentals forever and affordable. There's no lapsing on this arrangement, and I don't know. I think it's possible. We've been. I'd almost say it's possible we've been too successful in affordable housing, because I feel like we're really taking, by the discussion I'm hearing today, we're really taking this for granted. This isn't an easy thing to accomplish, getting this. But at the same time, we still have so much more work to do. This is a critical need, and I mean the reason why these private housing developments aren't happening, and I've spoken directly to some of these developers, is they say, and even with the current rental development happening, they say the rents they have to charge are so high to pay for their costs that people in Gibsons can't afford them. So what kind of future is that? Like, either we're going to get no development that are rentals for working people. Working people can't afford single-family homes. We all know this. This is well established over years. Or maybe one of these places is going to be built, and one already has been, where apparently people can't afford it. So this is an opportunity where it's true affordable housing, and it's not going to come around again. So I really wanted to touch upon this comparison to market housing and hope that maybe market housing will solve our problem, because it's not. I hear the question being called. Councillor Kroll.
I'd just like to make one comment. You know, when it comes to all the points you've made, you're pushing an open door as far as I'm concerned. All I wanted to raise was some of the concerns I have with respect to this project. You know, I totally agree that, you know, we determined when we initially sought legal advice on what else can we do on this property other than some of the things that were specifically listed in black and white. You know, I totally supported that. I'm all for housing. And I totally agree with you that, you know, Tunioperaty just knocks once. And, you know, with that, so with the approval of the bylaw, what sort of we don't know a timeline on this project. You know, from things I'm hearing with the province and funding towards housing, like, you know, they pulled $25 million from one housing project. Well, they didn't pull it, they put it on hold. Which, you know, it would be nice to know, you know, are the chainsaws going to be out next week and the shovels in the ground? Do we have a concept of timeline?
I mean, hypothetically, if we got the funding, would we know that even? Does anyone know that? But, I mean, I think that the important part, that we don't know that because it's so hypothetical. I can't even think, do we know when the Community Housing Fund, because their timing is always changing too. Sometimes the draw comes out at different times of the year. I don't know if they've even said when they'll announce who gets the funding, and but I mean that will be, even that will be, do we know? Yeah.
I know that I've been communicating with Kiwanis in working towards information that they need to submit their funding application by July 30th to the Community Housing Fund. So they're waiting for the outcome of this because the outcome of this determines whether they even submit an application.
Yeah, that's the only timeline we know at this point, really. But I mean, I think if we look at phase one, phase two is relatively smooth, but phase one took a few years. So I mean, even if people are looking for, it's not like we're approving a development permit here, where it's a rezoning. So if people are looking for a break, you might get a break, but we have no way of, in terms of construction going on, but we have no way of dictating that. Councillor DeAndrade.
Mayor, I really want to support this project. So my question is, but I'm concerned with, like I said, the south side, which is adjacent to the development, right? There's no buffer there. Yeah, there's a buffer on the back, which is awesome, the 10% park dedicated, but there's no buffer there. And the number of apartments require this amount of parking. So we didn't receive any options, right? Like council likes to have, okay, option A. Well, there was two options. Either you go 5 stories and take even further. But I'm concerned, can we address this project and address at least some of the concerns, which trees would support cooling down plus privacy, which is I know the other disturbance, maybe we cannot help too much. But that's the part that I feel uncomfortable, because we receive, okay, that's it for this land. We have to accept this or nothing. There's no option in the way.
We've asked for a tree retention plan, and I mean, this bylaw wasn't dependent on that. I mean, council already raised these concerns. I would just say, I mean, I see something different when I walk those lands. I see, when I look at the particular part of this property that's right next to the Country Village homes, that 3 homes, I think, or 3 or 4. There's, yeah, there's a few. I don't see like really viable. I see trees that are kind of slanted and could be falling on someone's house. when it comes to that property line. And I don't know if we have any better kind of evaluation of that land or thoughts on that, but I'll go to our CAO.
Just a comment, related to that, there was a discussion around the SPIA, that same area on the south. What we're finding in the first two phases is that rebuilding that SPIA has been helpful for the drainage because of the difference in height there, and it's being replanted. So from a environmental performance, it's an improvement, although it's gonna take time to get built in. But I think nearly every house along that fence had regularly flooding prior to the development. And this last phase, it will take it right to the end of the fence, heading west, I guess. And in that sense, it would improve that. We and the folks working there as well have attempted to retain some of those trees, but they're not sort of solidly planted in a way they're too close against the fence, and they are gnarly and not even a term for a tree, but nevertheless, they aren't exactly well-performing trees as far as that goes, for what it's worth.
We did have someone ask for the question to be called, but I appreciate questions are still being asked here, and I see Councillor Kroll.
Just for clarification, all we're really approving right now is a bylaw. You mentioned that, if with the approval of the bylaw, Kiwanis can apply for the funding. They may or may not get it, and if they do get it, it may be in a reduced amount, which might change the scope of the project. It might come back at the development permit stage in a slightly different iteration. Is that correct?
That I don't know. I mean, we've got an iteration here in front of us, but really, it's true. What we're looking at right now is a zoning bylaw. It's not like a development permit. It's not finalizing everything. So, and the official community plan amendment. Go to planning on that. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. I can clarify that currently this property is not within a development permit area for form and character. It's possible that after depending when the application comes in, if it's after the OCP updates, it could be in one of the revised development permit areas. But by the fact that it is on town land, there is an opportunity also for the town to put conditions on details of the project.
Councillor Kroll.
Okay, in light of that, I'm prepared to call the question.
Okay, any other, there's still one more. I'm still gonna let,
thank
one more question.
Yeah, I think my concern with the zoning is because it approves already the 6 stories, so to me, and then the density. So to me, if something wants to change, we don't have room to change.
Not necessarily. We just heard form and character could be changed. Yeah. So, yeah.
To Councillor Dangetti's point, we're approving the potential of up to 6 stories. That doesn't mean if there's a change in the funding that Kiwanis receive that they're going to build 6 stories. There's a potential to do so.
Okay, so we've got both the official community plan amendment and the zoning amendment bylaw on the floor as I end further that. So all those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries. And now we have a motion to close for some items, and I just need to read the sections of the Act out, and there's a lot of them here, unrelated to these items. 91AM, 92BD of the Community Charter. And those are the items, and they're listed on the agenda. So I see Councillor Kroll moving that, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? The motion carries.